It's just that window of the really heavy.
Right.
Yeah.
Recording in progress.
Hey, good evening. This is a Greenbelt City Council work session. My name is Emmett Jordan. I'm the mayor.
Kristen Weaver, Mayor Pro Tem.
Jenny Pompey, council member. Daniel McKinney, council member.
Rodney Roberts, City Council.
Okay, it looks like Councilmember Niesel will probably be here. Councilmember Pope, she's not going to be here?
Miss Niesel is under the weather. She just sent a note. Yes.
She's okay. And Councilmember Pope is still on travel. She should be back next week. So information items, I think I have a couple, two, maybe three, actually.
I have one,
You got one?
maybe two.
I have one. Okay, lots of information. That's fantastic. So, this is a work session, so we hold these work sessions and council meetings a couple of times a month, actually more than that, to exchange information with community stakeholder groups or to gather information from staff, advisory boards, or residents. No formal votes or actions are ever taken at work sessions. Our work sessions and meetings are open to the public, except for executive sessions as authorized by state law, so that residents have an opportunity to observe council's deliberations. We do want to make sure that there are reasonable opportunities for the public to voice opinions on the matters being considered, so we'll pause periodically for public comment. I think you will probably just hear from the Board of Elections and Council probably for about a half an hour, and after that we'll begin to open up and take comments and questions from the public in general. So if you're here in the room and during those times, if you raise your hand with a comment, after being recognized, you can go over to the podium. We need you to state your name and where you live in Greenbelt, more or less. We need that for the minutes. If you are on Zoom, you can use the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen to submit a written question. And if you raise your virtual hand on Zoom after we recognize you, we can promote you so that you can speak. And if you're watching on cable TV, on Facebook streaming, or on YouTube, you can send us a question by email. It's sometimes it's a little bit hard for us to pick up on those questions, but you would actually send that email. The email address is questions@greenbeltmd.gov. So in all those cases, please limit your remarks to about 3 minutes and speak on one topic related to the question under consideration. And we ask that you avoid questioning the motives of others. And just in general, we're all neighbors, so please. So let's see. The topic for tonight's work session is non-citizen resident voting. And this is a topic that we have been grappling with for a little while. There was a non-binding question on the 2023 election about non-citizen resident voting. And that actually passed. There were nearly 1,600 voters who supported that question, about 2/3 of the people who were registered to vote. So subsequently, we've been discussing the possibility of initiating a charter amendment to allow non-citizen residents to vote in our local elections. And the Greenbelt Board of Elections and other advisory boards have been thinking about this question. And this initiative aims to make local governance more inclusive by enfranchising all of our residents, regardless of their citizenship status. And the proposal that we'll be talking about tonight reflects Greenbelt's commitment to diversity and aims to ensure that all of the voices of the community are heard in the local decision-making process. So the Board of Elections has actually written and approved a draft amendments to the city code and the charter for us to consider. And that's the topic of the discussion tonight. And I want to welcome members of the Board of Elections here. Steve Gilbert, how are you tonight?
As well as can be expected, I guess.
Okay, do you want to introduce your peers there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve Gilbert again, and to my right is Beth Terry, Angela, my left, um,
Nicole Shaw.
Is Nicole Shaw. Yes.
Okay, okay. And I want to, first of all, I just want to express council's appreciation for the work you've been doing. Also, Allison Gary and Maxine Morrison are members of your committee. So this question and the elections, I guess that would be coming up in about a year and a half. Very, very important. So we're talking about this now. So to open up the possibility of putting some of these suggestions into place in the coming election. I neglected to acknowledge and recognize our city manager, Josue Samaran.
Good evening, Mayor.
Got our assistant city clerk, Shania Lashley Mullen, with us tonight as well. So basically, we have a document to look at. It's report number 2024-3, non-citizen voting legislation. And I propose that we pull that up on the screen. And if the Board of Elections representatives can kind of walk us through the amendments, that would be great. We can talk about them a little bit. It's not like a total rewrite of the charter or the code. It's just a few additions.
That's right. And Beth Terry, who had the biggest part in doing it, will walk you through it.
Okay, Beth Terry, let's see if we can pull it up on the screen.
I don't think
And
I had the
before we
biggest
dive
part,
in,
but
it's just logistically, we've been getting better and better at these hybrid sessions, but sometimes it's like we'll pull something up on the screen here, and you can see it on Zoom, and you can't see it on Zoom necessarily, but we can see it in the room. So I just want to make sure it's up.
Visible on Zoom.
Okay. So first, Steve, before we go to Beth, what's the difference between the city code and the city charter?
The charter is, at the city level, similar to the Constitution of the state or the national government. So it's the basic document that sets out the framework of city government and basic rules. And it is theoretically and as a practical matter somewhat more difficult to change the charter than the code. The code is the city laws. So you have the various titles, and the election code is in Chapter 8 of the city code. So this is basically an amendment of charter because we're changing a bunch of the rules that provide for who can vote and how they register and so forth.
Yeah, very good, very good. So I have a basic question that I was wondering about. So is our city charter and our code, are they subordinate to the county and state charter and code? With our ordinances and resolutions, it's always been my understanding that when we pass something, it has to be either equivalent or stricter than what is in the state or county charter and code. So it's sort of a legal question.
You all have the freedom to pass regulatory laws that are stricter or a little more lenient or the same as the state or the county. It's entirely up to you. And city government has remarkably few restrictions under Article 11E, like Edward of the Maryland Constitution. So the state sets out a few requirements, but basically you can set up with your charter or amending the charter, you can set up whatever form of government you want. This is basically a council form of government that makes all the decisions. So your council is both executive and legislative, and it is theoretically possible, for example, to have a form of government like the county. The county has a county executive and then a separate council, and the executive does the enforcement of the laws, and the council does the passage of the laws. So you can do it that way. You could have a strong mayor, quote unquote, like Bowie does, But not to disabuse you or anything, but you, Mayor Jordan, are one of equals, if you will. And that wasn't a physical type of thing. That was more of a.
Hey, so Steve, just in terms of context, you're a lawyer and you've worked with Prince George's County for many years.
Right.
So on this question about our charter and code, counties were sort of enabled in the same legislation from the state as municipalities. So that question about whether or not our charter and code is subordinate, I guess it would be equal. We would have the same latitude as the county.
More
It would have to
equality,
be-
yes.
It would have to be just the same or stricter than what's in the state. Is that correct?
As a matter of policy, you can set your the strictness or leniency of your regulations however you want, and if it's stricter than the state, then within Greenbelt, your rules will apply. If it's the same or less or more lenient, then it kind of doesn't matter.
Thinking like with, I don't know, gun control, like if we passed an ordinance just forbidding guns in Greenbelt,
Right.
it probably, that would not be constitutional. We couldn't really do that because, it would be more lenient than what the state allows.
Well, yeah, I suppose. There's no subject matter prohibition that I'm aware of that would prevent you from having a policy expressed in your code about who can.
I think gun laws are.
Finish, then we'll go to you just in a second, Ronnie. So
No, but as to subject matter, I don't know why you couldn't have some rules within the city.
okay, I was just asking. Hey, Mr. Roberts, go ahead.
Well, I think because of the Second Amendment, gun laws are a different issue. That is,
Good example,
that
but it was
goes
just
to the federal government, not the state or the county. So that's not.
That's the same
not
as
really
with
germane.
the First Amendment, for that matter.
We can make all the laws we wanted, but then they would take us to court and say it's unconstitutional because of the
Well,
Second Amendment.
well,
Because,
well,
because
there's-
our
there's-
forefathers said someone can carry a musket, now people get to carry a machine gun. That's what some
So the
people
guns,
think.
that's probably not a good example, but it does sort of, there's a point to what I'm saying. So this question, these amendments, we do have to, as we amend our charter or code, it is related to what has been enabled by the state of Maryland. So I was just trying to be clear.
Not really. See, you all don't have to go to Annapolis all the time to get the authority to do things.
But the
basically-
charter does have to go. Doesn't the charter have to go and be accepted by
No.
the state?
No.
No. Okay.
No, not at all. And so Prince George's County, as you may know, is a so-called charter county, and the Prince George's County Charter, which I worked with for a long time, sets out the whole deal for county government, and county government is not really superior to municipal government in most subject matters.
They're equal. They were enabled at the same
Yeah,
time.
the one area that I can think of offhand is zoning, where the city, no city in Montgomery or Prince George's County is authorized to pass land use legislation. That's at the county level. Well, Laurel, but that's because Laurel is not in the. Is it?
Yeah, again, I'd love to refocus.
No. I think that these points are very, very mundane to our discussion, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot because you're acting in your role as the chair of the Board of Elections. So,
I'm used to it.
So if
you're a
there are
lawyer,
no
you're
other
supposed
questions
to be
before
able
we
to
dive in.
be on the spot.
But those were some important points that I was trying to raise. So let's go ahead, Beth, if you'd like to kind of walk us through the modifications here.
Sure. So, should I just go through the various changes in the charter?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So, in any section that is in brackets means that's something to be added. Anything that is underlined, nope, I said that backwards. Yeah, I said it backwards. Anything that's in brackets is to be deleted. Anything that's underlined is to be added. Okay. So, section 15 of the charter, which is about voters, would be changed to read: a qualified voter within the meaning of this charter is either a citizen of the United States who is a resident of the city of Greenbelt and who is duly registered with Prince George's County under applicable provisions of the Annotated Code of Maryland, or, if not a U.S. citizen, a resident duly registered to vote with the office of the city clerk under applicable provisions of the charter and code. So the city clerk would maintain a list of people who are who may legally vote in Greenbelt, but not in the county.
Okay, and that's section 18A.
15.
I'm sorry, 15A.
15. 15A. Mhm. And then 15B says, in the charter, this is a new section, in the charter and code, a resident, city resident, or resident of the city is any natural person who has a legal domicile or residence in Greenbelt, regardless of the person's citizenship.
Okay.
Section 18, registration of voters with Prince George's County. So there are basically two sections 18. There's section 18, which is about voters who are registered with Prince George's County. And then there's a new section 18A, which is registration of non-citizen voters within the city of Greenbelt. And there are very few changes in section 18. Some of these, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, were just to make the language smoother. Is that?
Yeah, I wasn't, or well, the average reader wouldn't be too excited about the old language in section 18. It's a little hard to follow. And one of the things you're supposed to do, as you may know, when you're drafting amending legislation, is you're supposed to make as few amendments as possible. You're supposed to leave it the way it is and just stick in the new stuff. So section 18B has these numbered sections which are kind of hard to follow, and we just left those alone.
Yeah, because it kind of skips, and there's no 16 or.
Yeah, so there's a sub B and then there's a sub C, and then we have a new 18A, which talks about non-citizens.
Number 10.
Yeah, that actually leads to one of the questions that I had, and maybe it is because the principle is to change as little as possible, but I noticed that in some of the new sections, Board of Elections is capitalized and not referred to as Supervisor Board Elections and stuff, which is then now inconsistent with some of the other sections that you didn't have any suggestions for changing, and like city being capitalized or not, which I realize are not super major things, but at least to me, when I look at it, it seems odd to see capitalized Board of Elections in some place in lowercase. Was that just because you wanted to avoid changing some of the other sections?
Well, off the top, I like capitalizing city and board, but the original charter had everything lowercase, everything. Clerk, city, board, everything was lowercase. And so in some of the amendments, to make the language internally consistent within sections, that was the idea of changing a few of the, taking out the small b board and changing it to capital B board. But otherwise, if it, if it wasn't, if it wasn't a part of the substance, I tried to just leave it alone.
Okay. Yeah, because I noticed, I think, like that section 18B1, for example, talks about the Board of Election Supervisors instead of the just Board of Elections capitalized. So I don't know, I think that's something, I recognize the principle of maybe not changing things when it's not a substantive change, but I don't know, at least to me, it looks pretty odd when you have differences in sort of emphasis
Yeah.
in Board of Elections versus lowercase Board of
Yeah,
Elections.
well, with that, the original charter had, for the 18 sub B there, had Prince George's County and then Small B Board of Elections. That was always sort of incorrect in the sense that it's not the right name for the board. It's actually technically the Board of Supervisors of Elections of Prince George's County, but Prince George's County Board of Elections is wrong, and it's better to say Board of Elections of Prince George's County.
Yeah, some of those, not an error, but as we, with the firm that we're going to use to kind of review the charter and the code, perhaps some of those things with capitalization and really minor things, inconsistencies will be picked up on.
I would ask Munico about that. And I don't think we were specific on the capitalization.
I got you.
But I'll reach-
Councilmember McKinney.
I have a question. I guess it's a little bit further in this, but if we are still moving along. In section 19,
Oh, we're not there yet.
Almost there. We're almost
Yeah.
there.
So,
Mr. Summer
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead of myself, but I was going to make a suggestion on section 18A. You have scheduled for deletion within the corporate limits of, and I think to avoid confusion that there are some mailing addresses that say Greenbelt and they're not within the corporate limits. Could we put
Oh.
that back in
wait, which one, is that 18? Oh, that's,
on the charter amendment 18A? So
okay. so
section
he's talking about
18.
over here.
Subsection A of
Subsection 8 of
Right.
18.
first page.
So it'll be page 3 in the package, page 1 of the proposed charter amendment.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense to add that back in. I know it's a little bit of, it's sort of legalese, but it's kind of important.
Oh, you mean the corporate limits thing?
Yeah.
Well, as to things like that, it sounds more legal, but it doesn't add to the meaning. I mean, lawyers are justifiably criticized for being too wordy about things, and the main reason for that is to be clear, so that it's not ambiguous. So you put in all the words, but when you say corporate limits, I mean, what else is it going to be? I mean,
just that's a point of confusion that comes up pretty often just with folks just outside of Greenbelt or the one apartment development that is sort of
right.
within our corporate limits.
Like
but it's
tucked into
not.
the national park, sort of, yeah.
Right.
Well, I was thinking of the Hanover apartment.
Oh, that one too.
Get calls to have litter picked up, and folks complain that, well, their bill says their address says City of Greenbelt, and they're not in Greenbelt.
You get a lot of calls like that? You
Well, I
probably-
wouldn't
yeah.
say a lot, but enough that it's
couple every
memorable.
Oh, let's keep moving.
As you may know, right at the beginning of the charter is a meets and bounds description of the city. They thought it was important enough to put that right at the beginning, which is questionable because whenever any outsider wants to look at the charter, they have to page through, this description before they can get to the actual stuff they care about.
A surveyor to really understand
Right.
everything.
Right.
That. Yeah. Beth, please continue.
Okay, so moving on to section 18A, which is a new section, registration of non-citizen voters with the City of Greenbelt. Persons who are residents of the City of Greenbelt but not citizens of the United States may register to vote and become qualified voters in city elections under applicable provisions of the Charter and Code. So this is just a really short summary of that. It's explained in more detail further further on.
Okay.
Okay. Then moving on to section 19. And was there? Oh yeah, in section A we had a change. What is that?
That's just cleanup stuff.
Okay.
Word V and adding applicable.
Applicable. Okay, so then in section D, on page, I don't know what page this is. Do we have it on the screen? Yeah, section D. Okay. Registration list for non-citizen residents. The city clerk shall prepare a list of qualified voters who are not citizens and shall make the list available in the same manner as provided above to all persons named above.
Okay, Councilmember McKinney, you had a question or comment about that?
Yeah. No, I guess, it's in alignment with basically any voter list is available to the public. I guess my immediate concern was just around non-residents and the list in there being sensitivity around the fact that they are non-residents and their, information being available to anyone. But I understand that it probably aligns with that most voter registration list is available to the public. But I'm just wondering if there is, I don't know, some language that we can address. And I don't know if
Yeah, when
what I mean?
you register anywhere in the U.S.,
Yeah.
you kind of expose yourself
Exactly.
to any politico who wants to get the list
Yeah.
and knock on your door. And there's nothing we can do about that.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is it may mean that some people don't register because they don't want their information out there, but it's just the law of the land,
Mayor Pro Tem.
I was actually curious about that because it says that they are to be posted, and maybe Shania knows this. Where are they currently posted? Because I know you can get the county lists by requesting them online, but then it talks about posting them. And where do we post them before elections?
Does that language need to be adjusted?
What I think happens is
The County Board of Elections. It's true. Mr. Samaron, I thought you.
I don't have anything to add.
Oh,
That's-
okay.
Yeah, the way we do it is the clerk, downstairs on the board there, refers you to the clerk. So if you want to look at the list itself isn't posted, but there's a posting that you can consult the clerk and see the list then, or get a copy.
So it's posted in the sense of it's available in the clerk's office.
Yeah, the posting just tells you to go to the clerk.
Okay.
So there is a little bit of an extra barrier.
Right,
It's not that
It's on some
it's
wall.
not stuck on the bulletin board outside the municipal building.
No.
The actual list.
No.
A few years back, when the INS was, approaching or trying to obtain list from municipalities and states with the sanctuary cities, I believe we passed an ordinance or a resolution, or we did something, sort of pledging to protect, to not necessarily share information unless there was a subpoena. Can't quote exactly what that was, but we did do that. Michael was conferring with a thumb. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that would apply to this voter list, and I don't know that our voter list will differentiate whether or not a person is documented or undocumented. I mean, because many people are non-residents and they're green card holders or visa holders, and that's probably the majority of people who will register. I mean, anyone would be able to, but this list would not differentiate between someone who's documented and undocumented.
Yeah, well, right now, you can't, even if you have a green card,
Yeah.
even if you have a green card, you have to be a citizen now, today.
Exactly, but I'm saying this list,
Oh,
were it to become
if
law,
were to-
it wouldn't differentiate.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So let's see, is that going to take us to section 33?
I think 26 first.
26.
Okay.
And this is, I think this is just cleaning up some of the language also. Upon satisfying the judges of election of their identity rather than his or her, any person whose name appears on the registration list provided by the Board of Elections of Prince George's County, changing the name again.
Right, taking the
Or,
supervisor.
but the important part in here is adding, or the city clerk may vote. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, then section 33 is about appeals. Originally, the section only had to do with appealing to to Prince George's County. And it adds a sentence, any challenges to the registration list provided by the city clerk shall be filed with the Board of Elections of the city of Greenbelt.
So I was thinking about that a little bit, and I know during an election, sometimes on election day, there are provisional ballots and whatnot, and the Board of Elections has to kind of look at them,
Right.
and candidates can also challenge a ballot or something. I believe there's and that's sort of exactly what this, any challenges to the registration list. So
Right, right. You can challenge somebody as not being a valid voter or a person who is allowed to vote, and you can also challenge the list because you're not on it. You know.
huh. Thank you. Let's see, and that's pretty much it, right? Oh, no. There's that was all in the code.
Then we have
That
code
was all in the
amendments.
charter, then we have amendments to
Yeah.
the code. So we're going to keep going. Council will have some discussion with the Board of Elections, then we'll open it up and take some questions and comments.
Okay, so the code amendments are to section 8-2, voter registration. A says registration of persons wishing to vote in city elections shall be made in accordance with sections 18 and 18A of the charter and this section of the city code. So that's adding 18A. B is all new.
How come B says reserved? That was
That-
actually taken out.
Yeah, that's taken
Okay,
out.
so it's
That
not
was,
reserved
it was
anymore.
it
So
was-
it's new.
reserved and we've used it. We don't know what it was reserved for, but we're taking it. All persons who are eligible to register with the Board of Supervisors of Elections of Prince George's County must do so with that agency in accordance with state law and the law of the city of Greenbelt. And then C, a person who is a resident of Greenbelt but not eligible to register with Prince George's County because of the person's citizenship may register with the clerk's office to vote in city elections. The person must be over 16 and must file at least 30 days before the election in which they first wish to vote a registration application, and either 1. A document that shows residence in Greenbelt, including without limitation a student's identifying school paper, a Maryland driver's license, or similar government paper, a utility bill, or a mortgage or lease, or similar paper showing an interest in property. Or 2. An affidavit in which the person states that they reside in Greenbelt but have no document showing their residence. And one of the other documents that we provided is the application from the city of Hyattsville that allows non-citizens to vote. And that's basically how they do it. And on the back, on the third page, is their affidavit swearing that the person lives in Hyattsville and that they don't have any of those documents.
Okay, I had a question about that. Also, with Section B, that sort of speaks to the concern that I brought up initially about our laws in the city of Greenbelt being subordinate to state laws or county regulation. And I believe we would need to be subordinate to state law. So I'd actually like to have our municipal council take a look at that question just to be perfectly clear about that. And with the question about 82-1, it seems like having a mortgage or a lease, you would need to have both that and the affidavit just to kind of ensure that people are saying, yes, I do live here, as opposed to this is a piece of property that I have and I'm renting it out to somebody else. So is that the intention?
Yeah,
That we have
basically the
both?
documents on their own have to show that I mean, if you just put in a lease and an application, then you are attesting that you live at this address and that, you've lived there since the lease started.
So the proposal is that but everybody would need to do the affidavit regardless.
Well, everyone will have to fill out an application.
Right.
The application has
Has the
them
affidavit,
swearing
yeah.
that they live in Greenbelt. The affidavit is just for people who don't have any documents.
Or people, let's say you live in an apartment and you're not on the lease and you're subletting or something for someone else, you don't have any
Right.
documentation. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, one small thing. I wonder if in 8-2C, we should specify may register with the city clerk's office. I realize it's adding an extra word, but there is, after all, a county clerk. So I think, I don't think that would cause many people confusion, but I think in other places, most of the other places, we've talked about the city clerk. So I would just suggest adding that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify also, excuse me, in 8-2C, a person must be over 16 and must file at least 30 days before the election. So does that mean at the time of the election, like could they file and still be 15 and at the election they'd be 16 because there's 30 days that you have to file 30 days before the election? You see what I'm saying? Like I'm
No,
trying to.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand. That does come up if you are like a junior at Roosevelt,
Right.
and you will be 16 by the day of the election. I think we let you vote.
Okay.
But to be perfectly frank, I don't think that's what it says right there.
I don't
It
think so
says
either.
you have to be over 16, and that means you have to be over 16 at the time you're registering.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it says.
Yeah, I that was actually a question when we were canvassing during the election. That question actually came up specifically about a student not knowing, they were about to turn 16. They would be 16 before the election. When could they actually register? Because right then they were still 15. But they wanted to be able to vote in the election, and by the election they'd be 16. So if there's a way maybe to clarify that.
Must be 16 or older on the day of the election.
Yeah, that would be the way.
I think we could change
the way
that.
you
The
would
person
say
must
it.
be 16 or over on the day of the election and
Yes,
must file. I
that's
think
the way. That's the way to change that. Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, Councilmember Pompey.
I think for our in our regular election code, the reason they have to be 16 is because they file with the Board of Elections, and you can't pre-register with the Prince George's County Board of Elections until you are 16.
That's correct.
So just to answer that question, they have to actually be 16 before you can pre-register, because that's how we get our list of people who are eligible to vote as 16-year-olds. As someone who's 16-year-old has recently registered to vote, so
I think that's correct.
yeah. So And then the other question was just for you, Mayor, about Section B. The question that you have for our attorney is the question that you think we can't make this law because non-citizens can't vote, or like what's? I'm just wondering what your concern of the legality is.
I just want to make sure that that it is legal. So I don't really have. I'm not making a value judgment one way or the other. It's just it has been my understanding that municipal law is subordinate to state law, not to county law. So anything that we do has to be stricter, either the same or stricter than what's mandated by the state. And I just want to get clarity on that.
Because we do allow
So I'm not gonna
16-year-olds
even
to vote.
debate. Yes, we do. Yeah, but I just want to have an opinion on that. You know, I think any council member can ask a question of our municipal attorney. So
I don't think can you?
Certainly not when it comes to elections, because we create any type of form of election that we want to do. It's not the state telling us how we have to have our elections.
I'm asking the question. Yeah, so.
We have shared the proposed language with our solicitor, and the solicitor is reviewing it, and we'll be drafting the resolution language to adopt.
Okay,
the charter
excellent.
amendments.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the 16-year-old question because I think because I pulled up the Maryland voter registration application and it says you be at least 16 years old. You may register to vote if you are at least 16 years old, but cannot vote unless you will be at least 18 years old by the next general election. So I wonder then if because how do we keep track of 16 and 17-year-olds that are eligible to vote in Greenbelt elections now? Because didn't we this was before I was on council, but we passed something allowing them, but they can't register with the county. So how do we keep track of that now?
Well,
They can register.
They are registered with the county.
Yeah, it's a state, it's technically a state agency. It's called the County Board of Elections, but it's technically a state agency. I mean, the county can't tell them what to do. It's even though it's called county, it's technically a state agency. And when we get the list from the Board of Elections in Upper Marlboro, that includes 16 and 17-year-olds.
But so I guess the question is somebody who's in that very, that 1 month gray area of not 16 yet, but will 16 by the election, will they be able to register with the county to vote in local elections? Or or should they also be allowed to add to the list, to the separate list? Just that, I mean, most, it seems like it's not gonna be that many people, not many, almost 16-year-olds who are gonna be in that position, but maybe they should also be able to be added to the list we're keeping with the non-citizen residents, so they'd be able to vote in the local.
So this is a good point because when we were doing this, we wanted both to be as equal as possible, citizen voting and non-citizen voting. And I don't think that non-citizens should have a right that citizens don't have. So they should be the same. So either we just do what the county does, or we add to, that would be up to you, whether to add to a separate list.
So I guess we maybe need to look into a little bit more exactly when almost 16-year-olds can register with the county.
That's a follow-up question that we can ask, yes.
We'll
But
reach out to the
as
county.
it stands now, though, it's in compliance with what is with the county/state.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, right.
I did wonder, sort of related to that timing issue, in terms of when registration is allowed. I think it says I think was it in the code section about the fifth Monday before, maybe was that in the charter? I didn't note where that one was. Anyway, there was some place where it said that registration needs to be the fifth Monday prior to the election. Yeah, so I guess, okay, yeah, it is, sorry, it is back in the charter. I didn't note where that was happened. It's in 18B, 18C, and then 1. So this has to do with the names of persons who register in person or whose mail registration forms are received during the following periods will not be included in the list of qualified registered voters for the purpose of a city election. And it says between the close of business on the 5th Monday preceding the regular council election and the close of polls on the day of such election or runoff election, if any. But the county actually, because I just looked at their website today, the county's rule is actually, so that's about 28 days, but the county's rule is actually 21. So technically, someone who registered with the county could register in between the time that Greenbelt's charter says they shouldn't be on the voter list because of that slight difference. At least the way I interpret that. Maybe I'm not interpreting that correctly, but I noticed that because I was trying to figure out, well, so the 5th Monday, how many days is that?
Gives less time in between.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if we probably in that case might need to shorten to make a change in that provision to match what the county has to avoid problems. Although I don't know, 21 days, that's not a lot of time. I was actually a little surprised it was that short at the county level, but that's what their website says.
Well, I think we have to also appreciate what this is going to mean for the Board of Elections and staff, because there's a question about timing and whatnot. So I have a broader question. I guess it's about equity a little bit. So with our mail-in voting, we had an election Tuesday, and I think more than 2/3 of the votes that came in were by mail. So I'm just wondering, and this is really for the clerk, and I guess you guys would know as well, when do we, what is the cutoff date for mailing out mail-in ballots? Is it like,
You mean on the part of the voter?
in the part administratively, do we continue to, well, I guess we ran into this situation not too long ago, like maybe 2 or 3 election cycles, and we were still actually mailing out mail-in ballots a few
there's no
days. In
cutoff
fact,
date.
a couple people didn't
There's
get
no
it.
there's no cutoff
no
date.
cutoff
It's
date.
just practical. If somebody isn't if there's no time to get it in the mail, then they have to come to City Hall and pick it up. But the charter, I don't think, has a date.
No.
Okay.
I would also add one small typo, which I just noticed. This is going back to the second page, the charter, where we have sub C, and then you have paragraphs 1 and 2. On the third line of 2, at the end, you see where there's a little D in parentheses. That D should actually be a subsection D. So this thing that reads, the city clerk shall give at least 10 days notice, that should be a subsection after 2. In other words, we have subsection C, 1 and 2, and then the D is a separate subsection. Not that it makes any difference to what we're talking about, but I just noticed that.
That's a subsection. Oh, I think I see the D. There it is.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I forgot to write that down.
Okay. So, as far as this draft and the Board of Elections, I complimented you earlier on the foresight and the work that you've done, sort of bringing this forward. And I was gonna ask Nicole if there's anything you wanted to add, or do you want to talk about the process that the board went to coming up with this today?
Yeah, we're lucky that we have neighboring municipalities that have also undergone adding non-citizen voting to their charters. And we certainly took a look at the examples of our neighboring, like Bowie, and I think Laurel and Hyattsville, right?
We looked at Tacoma Park and
Hyattsville.
Hyattsville and
No, Mount Rainier and Colmar Manor, I think, also have
Riverdale Park.
Riverdale Park. Riverdale
Colmar
Park is
Manor.
the other one that we looked at. Thank you.
Right. So being able to look at those as well, to reference and see what other municipalities have been doing was a really helpful process for us to try to see what makes the most sense and keeps the kind of like an level playing ground for non-citizen voters.
What we came up with originally was a lot more complicated than what we ended up with.
That's because a board member who will remain nameless, let's say, wanted to be restrictive about it, and he was persuaded not to be.
Well, as a council person, seeing this form from Hyattsville also makes it easier to kind of visualize things. And I imagine in Hyattsville, they probably have this in at least Spanish and maybe French or something as well. Or they can probably translate it into a number of different languages. So as this moves forward, as it moves forward, we'll have to draft a form, and it won't necessarily be identical to this, but I imagine the Board of Elections and the administration will work on that. It would come back to council. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment because I've heard a few people comment on the difference in allowing an affidavit versus having proof of residence. But and looking at the Maryland voter registration form, there is actually an option to check if you don't have a driver's license or you don't have a social security number, and basically affirm that you are a legal resident of Maryland, you're at least 16 years old, you haven't been convicted of buying and selling votes, not currently serving a sentence of imprisonment for felony and conviction. The information in this application is true to the best of my knowledge, information, and belief. So and then there's another place where you check to say that you don't have you have to give your driver's license number if you have it, and your social security number if you can, but there is actually a place to say, I don't have any of these, I still affirm that this is the case, that this is true. So it's asking for the affirmation in place of certain proofs is actually done on the Maryland voter form, as far as I can tell. The only other thing that I wanted to ask about related to that is, I think again, looking at the Maryland form, it talks about the penalty for giving false information on an application for voter registration. It counts as perjury and is a violation of election laws. Would the same fines and penalties apply to a Greenbelt voter registration form as they would for the state? Or is there some way we need to set up some sort of penalty if people do say that they are a resident but turn out not to be?
Penalty.
County Board of Election, I would think that it would be the same penalties as the county would have if they are somehow.
Yeah, what you're being penalized for is lying under oath.
Right, it's perjury.
That's what the problem is, and if you do that at the city level, it's the same as at the county. I mean,
Okay.
it's the same thing.
So if people ask us about that, I don't really expect that to happen particularly, but if somebody does lie on their form about that they are and are not turn out to not actually be a Greenbelt resident, the same penalties for perjury would apply.
Right. You don't have to have that in your law.
No. I just want to know. I don't think it needs to be enumerated there. If just knowing that applies in that circumstance.
Right.
Okay, and to be clear, my question about affidavits was really focused on mortgages and people that can prove that they own a piece of property, but just verifying or having them swear that they actually live there full time or part time.
Right. You have to have more than a mortgage. You have to reside there.
Yeah, exactly.
But on the application itself,
It's there.
everybody has to
Everybody
swear
signs the
that they
affidavit.
live in Greenbelt, no matter what documents they provide.
Excellent. Any other questions from council? Is Amy online by any chance? I don't know if she has. any
No, I
questions.
don't think so.
Okay. I don't see Miss Pope online.
I think she may be arriving back tonight. I think she may be on an airplane.
Okay. Well, if it's council's will, let's open it up to the public for questions. Is that good? Okay. Well, the first hand up is Mr. Bill Orleans.
Thank you. Good evening. Uh, My question is informed by comments from Ms. Terry and also Councilmember Weaver. I don't know the answer to the ultimate question. I'm hoping Mr. Gilbert does. As a short preface, when I returned to town 20 years ago, it was on a February 4th. I spent a few days in a hospital, and after those few days in a hospital, returned to the house I was in, and immediately went to the library and got a library card and a registration form. This was in early February, so there were no immediate elections upcoming. I don't know when my registration was accepted ultimately and processed by the county. But let's say that I had returned, assuming I'm a citizen, and I moved into Greenbelt in mid-October, and I went to the library and got a registration form. What is the minimum time that the county requires to process my request for registration? I don't know the answer to that question. I'm hoping Mr. Gilbert does, and I have a second question.
Yeah, I'm not sure I do either. I would guess 30 days, but I'm not sure.
And I don't know.
Let's
I should know. We
ask
should
that
find
question.
out. I will. Ms. Terry suggested that she was interested in it being equal for citizens or non-citizens alike, something I absolutely agree with. I think the requirement that the Monday preceding, the fifth Monday preceding whenever the Greenbelt municipal election would be, whether that's 28 days or more, is probably unreasonable. It's not the county that's processing resident non-citizens' requests for registration. While there is, the mayor correctly pointed out, considerations of staff time and even Board of Elections time, presumably if a non-citizen moved into Greenbelt in mid-October, that's approximately 2 weeks maybe prior to the November 5th in this year coming, in which the general election would occur. Municipal election is always the first Tuesday after the first Monday. That would be 2 weeks. And it would seem to me that if it's possible that the county could process my registration form as a citizen moving into Greenbelt, that we should expect no less from the city processing non-citizens' requests for register in municipal elections. So before council would vote on anything here that's contained in this suggestion from the board, I think we should know the answer to what is the minimum time that the county requires a new resident of the county registering to vote, and if we can't then realign the suggestion in this form.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I've directed the city manager to make that inquiry. Mr. Hartman.
Michael Hartman, 2 Court Garden Way. Real briefly, and for what it's worth, Mayor Jordan brought up the case of the city's reaction to undocumented individuals. That was surrounding a discussion about whether the police, if they apprehended someone, would then turn that information over to ICE or immigration. So that was the context in which that was said. There were certain city council members at the time who were very leery of making formal proclamations about that because of fear of reprisals. So nothing was put into like official thing. And Mr. Orleans probably remembers better than I do that discussion. But that was the context in which that was discussed. So I don't know how it would apply to the registration list. That was brought up during the discussion within the Board of Elections, if I remember correctly, and I was told that it was not an issue. In fact, I think there was a council work session or something where that was brought up as well, and we were told that it would not be an issue. And then Mr. Goldrick Strassler said something about not incriminating yourself by registering and being undocumented or something of that nature. So that's just the context in which that was discussed. So I don't know how it applies to the election exactly, but there it is.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see, there was a comment online that I think was answered. That was answered. So, any other comments?
We have Trent Leon Learman has his hand raised.
Great. Okay, Trent, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. If you could speak a little bit closer into the phone or the microphone, I can hear you. But
Okay.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. No, I was just wanting to say that, I commend you all. I commend the Board of Elections on their hard work on this. And, as a lot of you alluded to, I think the great thing about it is it's not reinventing the wheel. 2017, Hyattsville and Mount Rainier passed this. 2000, I believe, 19, Cheverly passed it. And in addition to Colmore Manor in 2022 and Riverdale Park in 2021. And Tacoma Park was many, many years ago. So anyways, I'm happy to share about any of those cities and how they've gone about in doing it. I've been a part of some of the registration drives in each of those cities. So anyways, happy to answer any questions in the future, but I just wanted to share that, I'm really happy to see all of this happening.
Question from Mr. Learman.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Pompey.
Hi, Mr. Learman. Just a quick question. I know, as you said, you were involved in a lot of these non-citizen voter registration initiatives. Have any of the cities in this state or in our county, have any of those amendments or ordinances been challenged in a court of law?
No, none of those have been challenged in the court of law. From my understanding, also, none of those have actually, like, lists been FOIA'd or, people reached out to get those voter lists either. I know that's a separate issue, but I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? Please.
Hello, my name is Alexandra. I'm a new-ish resident of Greenbelt. It's my first time at a city council meeting, and I'm really glad that you all are discussing this legislation. I've been working in immigration, legal, social services in Maryland for the past few years, and I support this legislation for a lot of reasons. But the one comment that I wanted to make briefly is in the charter amendment, I think it's the one on the last page, section 8.2, in part C, it says in the second line, because of the person's citizenship. So a person who's a resident of Greenbelt but not eligible to register with the county because of the person's citizenship, I would suggest that this is changed, if possible, from the person's citizenship to the person's immigration status. I think this is more inclusive and just accurate to my understanding of what the legislation would be trying to accomplish. For example, you could be in the United States, you could be stateless, not have any citizenship, you could have been granted asylum, which would make you an asylee, and you would lack citizenship, yet you would have a legal immigration status in the U.S., and you would also be eligible to vote under this legislation. So I just think it would be more clear for clarity to have it say, immigration status instead of citizenship status.
Thank you, thank you. The same thing actually occurred to me. Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I actually think, I'm not sure that actually, I think that might make it more confusing because then it brings in to the notion that we are looking at people's immigration status, which we're really not. We're just looking at if they are not U.S. citizens, regardless of their immigration status. So it is about their citizenship and not being U.S. citizens. It doesn't matter what their immigration status is if they're a citizen of anywhere else. It's just, I think that actually might confuse it more because it implies that we care about their immigration status, which we don't. We just care that they are not U.S. citizens, but they are residents of Greenbelt, and therefore they are eligible to vote in Greenbelt. So I see what I see the distinction that you're thinking of, but I think that actually brings in immigration status to this, which we really don't want to, because we're not tracking that. I mean,
Well, if you don't have citizenship, that's it. I mean, you're either a U.S. citizen or not.
right.
If you're not a U.S. citizen, it doesn't matter, whether you're from another country or from no country. If you're not a U.S. citizen, you're not a U.S. citizen.
I can see the argument with putting because of the person's citizenship status and adding that word maybe makes it a little bit more clear. I would agree with that addition.
Sir. Good evening.
Hello. My name is Frankie Fritz. I'm also a newish resident of Greenbelt. I think to the last point, it is semantic, but I think it's important because it's saying something because of someone's religion. Well, what if they have no religion, right? I think that that's just kind of the distinction you want to draw out. That some people have no citizenship, and so it would center people's it would center more people if you use that language, and I think that's why it's more inclusive. But as in terms of for my day job, I work for Montgomery County government, and I've worked on numerous elections. And there's a lot of factors that separate city elections from county elections. County elections are partisan. Municipal elections, as far as I'm aware, besides Baltimore City, which is considered a county for legal purposes,
Frederick also.
Are nonpartisan.
Yeah, Hagerstown. Frederick and Hagerstown.
And I think that's relevant just because, if we're talking about equity between citizens and non-citizens, in everything but municipal elections, citizens do have the right to same-day voter registration. And that is a really important factor that helps a lot of people who are, who do have citizenship status. They're able to go on early voting or election day. And I think when you're canvassing and talking to people, it's really important to really make sure that folks know that they have these rights and that they can go down there. I understand there's operational reasons why the Board of Elections might not be able to get a list to the city the day of, but in consideration of all levels of elections, and obviously there's different federal laws that pertain to federal elections as well, but with regards to same-day registration, I really think that should be a long-term goal to get parity with the county list, because I know a lot of friends of mine who are students and don't realize that there's a really important ballot measure on reproductive choice who were not thinking about this election at all until they heard about that. So I think that that's something that I don't think you can solve in this legislation, but when you're considering parity, it's just that citizens do have the right to register up till election day. And this list would not provide for that currently, but as you look at how you conduct city elections in the future, that might be something to look at, how you implement same-day voting for everyone.
Thank you very much.
Is that correct that citizens have the right to same-day voting in Prince George's County?
No, it's not. No,
But
what same-day registration means is essentially the same as provisional voting. In other words, you register and vote on the same day, and they check on you later to make sure that you are properly registered. And if you are, then they count your vote. But to vote in Maryland in state elections, you don't get same-day registration. I don't know where you got that. All right, I'm not aware of that.
So it doesn't look like there are any more questions online. Are there any email questions?
There's one hand raised, Cynthia Newcomer.
Oh,
Yes, that's
hey,
correct.
Cynthia, how
I'd
you
like
doing?
to speak.
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. I also wanted to thank the Board of Elections for all their work. It was clearly a lot of time and effort it went into working with other municipalities to understand what they've done. Also, thank you to the council for the work that you're doing. just wanted to, say that low barriers are the most important thing so that all residents of our city can vote. And so I'm glad that what's been recommended, it seems to be very low barrier. I also support same-day registration as something that we should work towards for everybody. I wondered about a timeline for action on this, what the calendar looks like. And it sounded from what you said earlier that we're hoping to have this implemented for the next city election. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the goal. So we might actually move on this as soon as the next council meeting. I think we need to give people time to think this through, but a lot of work has really taken place. So I believe it's going to be on the agenda coming up
For first reading?
for first reading, and there'd be a second reading. So
Great, thank you.
fantastic. Any emails come in?
No.
Okay. So Board of Elections, do you want to sort of wrap things up a little bit, or some additional thoughts about what you've heard from our residents and the probing questions that council has put forth? And,
Not really. No. I think, I think that a lot of the comments that were made were good comments, things that we should look into. I've taken lots of notes on here. Do you want us to come up with a second draft of this based with the notes that we've taken from this meeting?
that would be very, very helpful.
Yeah.
And if you're comfortable with this, the city administration can kind of just look over what they've come up with to make sure that they've captured everything. And we've asked a couple of questions for council, our municipal council to consider as well. There's a couple of questions. So, yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I just think it's worth just going through the things that I think we talked about in terms of changes, just to make sure before we leave here tonight, we haven't missed anything. The ones that I wrote down, well, I guess one that was not completely resolved was restoring the language about the corporate limits of the city. I think, so I don't know if that change should go in the draft or not. That was Mr. Salmarone's request. I don't have an objection to putting it back in if it makes it clearer, but I don't know if there are other thoughts on that.
It makes sense.
What the Board of Elections said, that it's sort of, it doesn't need to be explicitly called out necessarily, because
So I did just notice that Hyattsville has it.
They
in
do,
theirs.
yeah, Hyattsville does spell it out.
Yeah.
I think it might make sense to, I think I would support putting it back in because that also matches what Hyattsville does. Even if it's slightly extra wordier, it just makes it very, very clear. The other ones that I noticed in 8-2C, adding status, so it says citizenship status, and then changing the language to be aged 16 on the day of the election. If we think that works with the way, I guess that depends on if we think the registration works.
I think we wanted to make it match what everyone else has, and so if that's giving non-citizens more time to register than citizens, and that's not fair.
And then we had some formatting, the D needs to be on its own line.
Yeah.
And then, I guess then the other question was figuring out the difference between the Greenbelt's rule for when you have to be registered by and Prince George's County rule, which I think is 21 days, is what I found on the PG County website was that that's when the voter registration rolls closed, is 21 days before the election. Now that's separate, I guess, from in-person registration. Did I miss any that we brought up?
well, I just, thinking about the Hanover apartments, I mean, they're surrounded by Greenbelt, so they're sort of within Greenbelt city limits. They're just not a part of Greenbelt.
They're not within.
They're not within the corporate
incorporated.
limits of the city.
But they're surrounded, so,
They're not in the city limits, though. They may think they are. Some residents there may think they are, but
So you're talking about maybe annexing them? Is that what you're getting at?
that we could talk to them about that.
and I'm just being real specific. Sometimes you can be overly specific.
I think within the corporate limits is fairly standard language. Okay, so maybe not the one about the 16-year-olds, but that's that's a gray area that we should maybe talk to the county about. Could we fix that disparity?
Well, and of course, this is coming up for first reading, and there'll be a little bit of time to actually research and tweak the language. We wouldn't be acting on this, I don't know, September or October, I'm not sure, but first reading, if it comes up, there's not discussion. It just gets read into the record, and then there's an opportunity to make small modifications that don't really change the intent of the amendments that we're adding.
But I think if we make those changes that we talked about for the one that goes on Monday's packet, then we don't have to discuss those changes again.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So here we are. I think we've covered things. Once again, I want to thank the Board of Elections for their hard work and thoughtful consideration of these issues and putting this forward. And I believe we'll have a draft for first reading on Monday's meeting. Okay, so thank you so much. We've got a few information items.
Can I just say
Oh, yeah,
briefly?
please.
I had an opportunity to attend one of the Board of Election meetings where they discussed this initiative, and I was just so impressed by how robust their conversation was and how equitable it was. The inclusion of voices of folks who were not members of the Board of Elections. I mean, people were allowed to sort of talk about, who were not members of the board, were allowed to talk about their opinions and what they thought, and sort of, I just thought it was such an inclusive process, and it was something that they just took so seriously and they worked so hard on, and it was really great to sort of hear them sort of go back and forth on it and bandy it about a little bit, and it just makes me feel so good and so confident in what you guys did, and I just appreciate it. It's such hard work and such important work, and you guys did a great job, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, let's move on. We got a few information items. Let's see. What did I have down here? First off, I was wondering, there was a Homeland Security or a weather-related call this afternoon, Mr. Summer, from the county. Is there any updates? Hurricane Debbie, I guess, is coming through tomorrow evening.
Correct. So today's call was a preliminary preparation call where we discussed the release of the National Weather Service forecast for a region. So we are expecting a lot of rain starting tomorrow for over the next 7 days with flooding potential in different areas. We are going to have a meeting tomorrow as the National Weather Service updates its forecast, but we are expecting a significant storm potential for tornadoes on the western side of the storm. Though these are all projections based on the weather pattern. We expect to know more information. What we did determine today were the distribution of sandbags. So sandbags will be available starting tomorrow through the 10th, and we posted that information on our social media, and we released an email to all our 19,000 subscribers. So we've shared that information that sandbags are available. Sandbags will be available from 4 to 10 sandbags per household, and we've listed the distribution sites on our social media and our email distribution. So those were the tangible actions that we took today. The county is coordinating with the schools on cooling sites, potential cooling sites, should we have power outages. So that's in the works. We'll have more information tomorrow on that action item, and we expect to have more information tomorrow. So today was an important call just to outline the things that we need to do ahead of the storm.
Our Public Works Department, they do such a great job of coordinating and just looking ahead. So one thing that happens is sometimes they'll check problematic storm drains to make sure that they don't flood over. Like Southway, the drain by the Baltimore-Washington Parkway always seems to flood.
Correct. Our Public Works teams has a checklist, a storm preparation checklist that they go through, so clearing the catch basins to make sure that water flows freely. We look at the lake, the Greenbelt Lake has a dam, so we inspect the dam as well. So those are on the checklist, and the team will work on those things.
Danielle?
On that list to check, can you also look at the area behind Greenbelt Station? That floods a lot when there's considerable rain. There's the path that goes over, I guess it's the retention pond. You know what I'm talking. It's on the
I
bike
think
path.
it's actually, I think the bridge is technically over Indian
Boardwalk?
Creek. but
India
yeah.
Creek. And so that there are a lot of people that walk through there to go to the metro station, walking from Greenbelt Station over to the metro station. So if we could just check to make sure, I don't think it could be sandbagged, but there's a lot of stuff that's overgrown. There's a lot of things that might cause some potential damage over there. Thank you.
I'll connect with you on the
Thank you.
specific location. Thank you.
Very good, very good. So in regard to the calendar and the news review, I think we're planning to have a town hall meeting on Tuesday. Did that make it into the news review?
We pulled it from the announcement. And we pulled it, we did not have enough votes in the affirmative by our deadline to the news review, so we pulled it.
Okay, so that would probably happen next week, the week afterwards, or we could still go ahead.
We need to determine the date. If council wants to pick a date, you give us the direction of what date you want to host this, and we can move forward in scheduling and staffing it.
Why don't we try and do that again, talk offline? We might be able to get more participation from the county or from other folks as well.
I think it would be good to make sure that the fire hall is available, because I think that's a good location to have it. I think that seems like a first step to check with them which evenings they might have available.
Well, there are other sites as well, and other sites might be perceived as more neutral. Not that that would influence a decision by a representative from the county or other. It's a thought. But
We're trying to be neutral. I'm not sure we're trying to be neutral.
Let's talk
I think
about
we're
it
well
off-
past
can
neutral.
Can we talk about it offline, please? And I'll just stop there. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, the only one, because that was one of the ones that I wanted to ask about. The only one, just to give a heads up, the Urban Sustainability Directors Network sent a letter through the Sustainable Maryland to Green Aces. They're looking at a letter in opposition to some proposed language, cutting funding in the House Representatives Fiscal 25 proposed language, cutting all funding for activities related to DEI and climate change. And the impact potentially on Greenbelt could be related to some of the funding opportunities that are through some of the federal funding opportunities. So that's something that Green Aces does not have a meeting in time. So I think they're looking to do a vote over email, but that would be something that if we wanted to vote on that would need to be on Monday's agenda. I haven't seen the final word from Green Aces, but I wanted to give you all that heads up. I know it's too late for the news review, but it still could go in the digital agenda packet or could just be voted to add to the agenda on Monday. But if we don't act on it on Monday, we can't write a letter.
Would you mind sharing the information with council?
Yes, I just got it today,
Okay, well,
so
thank you.
I haven't had a chance. This is me sharing it with you.
Yeah, physically, if you can send that around.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it. This is the first opportunity I had to talk to you about it because the email just came in today.
Okay. Jenny, did you have something?
I did
I
not,
thought
no.
you twitched your arm.
No, I'm good. Nothing.
Okay. Mr. Samarone.
The update I had was related to the community meeting. We received word from Chief Green's office. They did not accept our invitation to join us on either August 13th or 14th due to travel. So our invitation was declined. So the update is she's not coming to a meeting. Given that we pulled the announcement from the Greenbelt News Review, we'll need to select new dates to plan a meeting around.
Yeah, that'll give us another opportunity to extend the invitation. We've been pushing to actually get that meeting for a while, and in person would be powerful.
Correct. And I immediately responded, expressing gratitude for their response and asked for dates that are available for Chief Green and her team for a public meeting. So we sent that request. I can send a more formal request with your signature, Mayor. Might get better response.
Let's do that. Mr. Roberts.
I'm just wondering, why would we expect that they would come to a meeting with us when we're engaged in legal action against them? Why would we think that they would come and meet with us? That's what I'm.
Well, yeah, honestly, I'm not thinking that necessarily, but I think we need to extend the invitation so that the public would be able to hear from them directly. That's why.
And the public has requested that we extend this invitation.
The public's not, they're not gonna come. I mean, that's, forget it. Yeah, it doesn't make any difference. So, I think we have better things to do than chase something that's not gonna happen. We have a lot of work to do.
Definitely got a point
that's
there.
real.
Hey, it's not even 9 o'clock. I feel like we should stay here and talk for a little bit longer tonight. What do you think, Daniel?
I think we're okay. I think we have covered what we needed to cover.
Okay, well, this work session is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Should I have ended that meeting?